Thanks everyone, it's really good to see everyone here. And I'd especially like to thank all those that have come from a great distance. John, thanks for the introduction, sounded really good. I'd even vote for that person. Anyway, look, firstly I'd like to say thanks for coming to this launch, and I'm really honoured to stand for the most courageous political party on the spectrum of Australian politics. And what I would say as a small business owner, it's pretty clear, if you have a look deeply into the essence of political parties, if you're a small business person, there is only one party you can support, and that's the Democratic Labor Party. We understand small business because we are the small business party and we are the family business party. The thing is in Australia that over half the working population is employed by small business. So when the government are able to talk about employment statistics and data which is favourable to them, it's not because of them, it's because of small business. If small business pulled the plug, they would have been catastrophe, blaming something else that's, you know, overseas or whatever that they can't be accused of. But the truth is that small business in this country pulls more than its weight. Okay? In this country, small business pays more than half the tax. Small business doesn't have people to employ in an office trying to work out how to minimise tax, and small business doesn't have the resources to go to court or to lobby governments or whatever to try and get a concession on their tax. Okay, small business works, it employs people, it's productive, it pays tax, it puts food on people's tables. The other thing it does is it creates opportunity for exporting in this country. And I mean, these are things that people don't talk about because in the Parliament, no one is from a small business background. And that's really sad when you think about how many dollars go through the Canberra budgets that are actually raised by small business. And as a small businessman, I'm here saying we need support. Well, I did that in the past until my wife got sick of me whinging about it, and she said, look, I'm happy to listen to your whinging, but you've got to get involved, because if you're not going to do something about it, well, what's the point in whinging? So we are, and look at us. We're all here fighting. Now, the thing about small business is that because our party is made up of a lot of small business people, we're on the ground. We actually understand what's happening. We don't need to pay taxpayers' money to pay some consultant to walk the fields and say to find out what the average person's thinking. And it gives me great pleasure to firstly unroll to yourselves here and the general public that the thing that's going to dominate our policy launches over the coming months until the election is small business policies. Okay? They're small business policies that are written by small businessmen and women, but they're also policies that our party is actually proud to announce. And the thing that's really good about these, they're going to distribute wealth to more families, they're going to employ more people, they're going to give the government ability to get more tax receipts so they can use that money wisely rather than gambling on a mining boom to keep running, which is totally out of their control. And this first policy I raised tonight could be seen as being controversial if you're not in small business. And the policy is this, that the DLP believes that it to be illegal for a big business to pay a small business on greater than 30 standard days terms. And what this actually does, it stops big business from using small business and family businesses' finance to run their big business operation. And the sad thing is, and I'm just breaking this news, one of the biggest culprits of this big business juggernaut is our own government.
Exactly.
So you've got these small businessmen who've done work, who've waited their terms to be paid by government, by big business, whose families are now going without to fund these juggernauts who don't have, well, hopefully the government does have our best interests at heart, but a lot of those big businesses, they're not interested in our country, they're interested in making money. And who knows where that money ends up. Okay, so Small business, and this includes contractors, get held out all the time on finance. And then the other problem they face is that in going to those people who owe them the money, if they start having a go at them or questioning why aren't you paying and make things difficult, they can potentially lose that contract that they have. These people have no bargaining power. Okay? And if there's any person in a labour movement that says, oh, well, that's small business bad luck, that's exactly what brought on the 1891 shearers strike, is this exact issue. The big businesses or the big landholders or the big corporations, or whichever monster you want to say, back then even, they existed. People who didn't have any bargaining power got nailed. And in small business, this happens all the time. Many small businesses have to take out additional finance, which is expensive. And the large firms are basically getting this finance for free. And small businesses go broke all the time because of this. Okay? They go broke all the time. And when you're in small business, you don't worry about what, you know, fringe policy a desperate government or a desperate opposition are trying to bring to the centre to make out it's important. You don't worry about that. What you wake up in the middle of the night worrying about is, am I going to get paid? The bank manager keeps ringing me every week to find out, you know, when our overdraft is not going to be over its limit. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if the government just paid me the money they owe, I wouldn't be having these problems. And if the bank forecloses on them, they just take the house. I mean, it's pretty basic. The government will pay one day and you're left in a shamble. The DLP believe that small business success is real community success. And if big business needs finance, well, the big business can go to a place called the bank. Because why? And this is my the point of our party. If a big business needs to be financed by small business, they don't deserve to trade. Okay? And if they're going to go broke as a big business, go broke now. Don't drag down all these small businesses. And the other thing that's really important about this is it actually reduces the liabilities of small businesses. If you're a small business trading, and at the end of the month you send your account in, a month later they're not paying you, legally they have to, you know at that point, after 28 days after the end of the month, you know there's a problem. Okay? And what can happen now, and I hear about it all the time with small business, they work on a project, payment doesn't come through, they keep working, it can be 4 months down the track when they realise there's a problem. This will give small businesses the opportunity to realise real fast there's a problem. And if that big business can't get finance, well, why should a small business? To fund them. The other thing, it'll give small business the edge, especially in retail. Well, then small business will then be able to compete, because big business will then have to borrow more money to do what they want, especially in retail, whereas small business won't have to, because they'll have more wealth in their pocket from the money that's owed to them. One of the things that I think is something that's been adopted by both major parties is the concept of political laziness. And that is when we have a fundamental problem in society, which we have, and that is the distribution of wealth. And we look to big businesses to somehow solve this. And in one of those is this, has turned into this two-speed economy, or two-tiered, or whatever junky political name you want to call it. And what that means is that, you know, because our mining boom was cranking along and pumping money into very selected pockets, it still added up to something. But it wasn't spread through a community. And if you compare that to another boom that happened in the late 40s, early 50s, the wool boom. The wool boom was distributed all over the country. Anyone who grew wool, or grew sheep to get wool, had this money. The communities they lived in got the money. It was distributed perfectly. There wasn't shareholders involved from other companies or superannuation funds or whatever, where the money just sort of drifted away. And this boom was different. But unfortunately, with this boom that we've had, it was seen to be the cure of all things. Big businesses giving jobs seems to be the cure of that. The problem is this. It's pretty insulting as a small business person, knowing that we've got companies holding out on us and we really can't do much about it. We've got the government doing the same, but we can't do that much about that. But the money that we have to pay in tax often we see state and federal governments going to a big business and offering them grants or money to keep the employment going. Now, a lot of that money they're giving is small business money. Has anyone here ever seen a politician go to a small business and say, hey, we didn't pay our account last month, I realise we're doing it tough, here's 20 grand to sort of pull through? That doesn't happen. But we're prepared to go to some other company that may not even be Australian owned, and we're giving taxpayer money from a small business and we're draining that out of small business and family business. And clearly it's not right. And I'll go one step further. There's no member federally. Well, I was told they had 16 years experience between 104 sitting members in business. But that could mean they were sitting in some chicken pen of a business, just pumping through some numbers or whatever. But if they're not in a small business, they don't understand the concept of having your own family's capital on the line against an overdraft, loans or whatever to make it happen. And the benefactor of it all really is hopefully your family, but the government. And with the Liberal Party, I actually asked the head of the Liberal Party which of his sitting members federally came from a small business background, and the answer that came was no one comes to mind. I mean, this is a major sector of the society, and no one comes to mind. You know, so that's why I'm saying the Democratic Labor Party, our bread and butter is small business, is family business. We know that's where the prosperity comes from. And the Democratic Labor Party is proud to say that we are the small business party and we're the family business party. And if small business is profitable, and you've only got to see in communities, I mean, anyone that's involved in any football club or cricket club or sporting organisation, but even other organisations at a local level, you go into the walls and see who sponsors the clubs. You know, the clubs are all sponsored by small business. You don't see the big four banks, you don't see the big four accounting firms, you certainly don't see the government, right? And you don't see these multinationals, you don't see hedge funds, we don't see any of that. What we see is local businesses supporting local initiatives. And I know as a person who's tried to find support for these small community things that I've been involved with my kids and family and whatever, that, you know, you just know after a while when you're spending your time, you don't knock on a big business's door, because then they tell you you've got to put in writing, you've got to go see this guy, he's away, and this, you know, red tape thing goes on. You go to a small business, they understand local, and they give to you. If we had more small businesses, we'd have stronger communities. We'd have more tax. And which brings me, you know, if oftentimes people ask me, well, what's the difference between the Democratic Labor Party and the other Labor Party? Right? And, you know, look, I could go on about, and the speaker before me did a great job in summing up a lot of that, but let me say this. One aspect that makes us so unique is this. The DLP would have a centred economy on small business and family business. And we, as a party, would work really hard on developing that and manufacturing. Manufacturing for, especially most manufacturing is done at a small business level in this country. And the joy of that manufacturing is this. Yes, it can develop wealth and tax and whatever, but it actually gives job opportunities to people who have no opportunity. Okay? It can get people off the streets who don't have a job, they're not educated, even illiterate. And you know, there's members of my family that came off boats to this country who were able to go into a factory and work on a machine. And even though they aspired for better, they were still able to get a job, they were still able to feed a family, right? And they were still able to walk around with a bit of dignity. And it's family businesses, small businesses and manufacturing that give those opportunities. Small business, I'll tell you now, being in one, you are so much more lenient on people, knowing at a personal level, because I could see this guy and I realised that he's got a sick son and he can't drop him or whatever is happening, because I'm a family man too, that, you know, because I know this guy face to face, it's small business is not like, oh, these are our rules and these are our policies and they can't be broken because upstairs he's going to do this to me and whatever. No, it's people, serving families, and in the end serving a community. We would centre our whole economy around this small business, and we would not be gambling We would not be gambling on solely on this, you know, internationally driven prices on commodities that are going to somehow save us, and then we blame other countries overseas saying that, you know, these countries, we're doing so much better than them, but they don't have all the resources that we do, right? And this is the way we've gone, and now we're in the point where our government has promised all these things, the price that they have no control on has gone, and we're short. And you know who'll pay for it in the end? It's the students, it's the families, it's the small business. And so the one thing that's different about the Democratic Labor Party is this, and for any reason why this is important, I'll tell you why it's important. It's because for one reason, if for one reason only, that we know the strains of what single parents and single mothers especially, and the job of looking after children without support. And they had a single mother's pension, right? And the reason why we would think it's important to promote small business because we could get more tax receipts, so our Labor Party would not throw these people in a most undignified way and just dump them onto the New Start allowance, cut $50 off their wages a week, and think to ourselves that that's acceptable and financially responsible. The mistake wasn't made. The mistake wasn't made when they scratched out that $50. The mistake was made 7 years before when that party came to power and had the opportunities to make some reforms, but they ignored that. And the problem comes 6 years later when we don't have enough money in our economy to do this. So we're making these decisions. And that's the difference between our party and them, because as a Labor Party, we would do whatever it takes to keep those single parents on that pension, because that's what's important. It's not important that we spend all this money on consultants and fringe issues and bring them to the centre and tell them, you know, if we're not thinking this way that's radical, and we call ourselves progressive, but really we're experimental, and we don't know if this experiment goes wrong.
I like that.
And if these experiments go wrong, like, not like in small business, they come take my house. No, these people protected themselves. They're saying, you know, this is the way to go. We've never been there before. It's untested water, but we just bank on this. And if it falls apart, well, you know, I'm retired and I'm out of here and I'll see you later. And I won't do interviews either. But you see, the thing is, as a Labor Party, these are our principles. And if there's other parties out there that think that's acceptable, I'll tell you now, they don't have much. If they think that's acceptable to dump single mothers and single fathers on that New Start allowance, and that's acceptable to them, they don't have much.
It's immoral.
And that's why our party, right, as the fighting man and women's party in this country, that's why people will like this. They will like this because they actually waited for so long for someone to get up and have a go and say, you know what, the way we've been governed is crap. Right? Yes. And I know I haven't got all the figures under my name about, you know, I'm an economist and this and whatever, but I've run a small business and I've done that successfully. No one else in that parliament has, except John Madigan and the Democratic Labor Party. In closing, that sort of means I'm getting to the last page, you know. In closing, I just want to sort of sum up, you know, a similarity that I believe both parties have sort of got. And that is, fundamentally, they don't understand the value of a dollar. Okay? They don't, and I'm not talking about at a technical level, and I'm not talking about at a policy level, and I'm not talking about at a budgetary level, where there's just zeros flying around like Super 66 balls. And you know, we've got Brains from Thunderbirds there as our treasurer, all right, saying that he's got it all under control, we've got nothing to worry about. But what they don't understand is the value of a dollar at a personal level. They don't understand it at a family level, and they don't understand it at a community level. And they don't understand it how hard small businesses have had to work to pay their tax, to pay their provisional tax, to keep someone on. You know? to keep someone on. Big businesses, they just say, right, not making enough, cut. Small business, he knows the family. That guy lives local, especially where I come from in a local town. You know people, you know the families, you see them at school, and people that employ people, they know they just can't, and they make concessions. They cut down hours. They make concessions as a business owner. And it's these efforts of making $1, saving $1, going without to meet your tax obligations as small business does. We understand as a party fundamentally what the value of $1 is at all those levels. It's not just like billions and trillions and millions and we're just going to throw this money here and there. At a small level, we know the work that goes into small business to keep it afloat. And the DLP is made up of those people. So those people that know the pain to keep a business afloat, they're in our party. They're in our party. You go to another party and say, hey, I'm from small business, we're getting a rough deal, let me stand up the front and talk about it. We've got this chain of power, we've got all these hacks, they've done time, they've got mates, influence, and then up they go. The DLP, and this policy that I've announced today, it's such a small policy, but it's so fundamental that it is illegal for a big business and a government to hold out money from a small government, to be implemented by the taxation department, right? And the thing is, look, I realise there's all these monkeys out there who are going to criticise it, but what I'm saying is this: any person involved in small business, any person with money out over 120, 150 days, and any person who's had to go without themselves to meet their tax obligations to the government, while the government is holding back their money over 90 days, will know that this policy is music to their ears. And I'd just like to thank everyone for their time.